Hey everyone, welcome to Codeigniter from Scratch Day 6. I'm Jeffrey Way. So today we are going to get into building, we're going to work with session classes, form validation, the forms helper, and we're going to build a little login utility. A lot of you have been requesting that, so this will be your first dive into that. So before we get started, just a quick bit of promo. We just launched a brand new site in the Envato network called workawesome.com. It's a fantastic site. Be sure to follow them on Twitter at workawesome and subscribe to them. It's a great site. Think of it just different ways that you can be more efficient at your job. So be sure to check out that, as well as they have an option for you to download their wallpaper, which I have the too large one, so that looks ridiculous. But they have a bunch of different sizes you can download. Okay, and of course, don't forget to vote for us on thenetawards.com as Best Vodcast and Podcast and Blog of the Year. So we would appreciate that, thenetawards.com. And here's what we're going to be building. So just a very simple utility, login tool. If you don't have an account, we'll give you the option of creating an account. That will set that up in the database. Or if you have an account, you can log in. And it's going to take you to a members-only area, and this will only be accessible if you've signed up for an account and you've been given the proper credentials. So, for instance, if I if I copy this and then log out and then try to visit that page again, because I logged out, our session was destroyed. So if I open it in again, it'll tell me you don't have a permission to access this page. So that's what we're going to be building today. So I'm going to close that out, and I'm going to open up my websites and close out day 6. And this is where we left off yesterday. Don't worry if you didn't watch that day. We're going to be going from scratch, but we'll be using this same folder. Let's do some quick work here. We're not going to use the user guide here. Let's open up our application folder, and let's just do a quick bit of cleanup. Within the view, let's get rid of the welcome message and options view. We're not going to use really anything from day 5. Site and welcome, get rid of those. And our models, we don't have a site model anymore. Okay, so I'm going to grab this and bring it into text main. And you know what, I'm so sorry about that desktop. That just looks ridiculous. But no big deal. Let's open up TextMate and let's get started. The first thing we want to do is create our login controller. So within controllers, I'm going to right click and create a new file, and we're going to call it login.php. All right. First thing, let's set it up. Class login needs to be uppercase, and it extends the controller, of course. And the first thing we want to do is create that index function. And this will be just when the login controller is loaded, what are we going to do? What I'm also going to show you how to do today is set up a base template. That way, whenever you create a new view, you don't always have to create the header and the HTML and all of that. You'll just reference a template that will have that loaded, and then similar to maybe master pages, if you guys work with ASP.NET, it'll be similar to that. So the way we can do that is, let's go ahead in our view. Excuse me. I'm going to create a new folder, and we'll just call it includes. And I'm going to create a new file within here, and I'm going to call it template.php. So what we will do here, this will be our base file that all of our main content will reference. So all we're going to do here is we're going to do this. Remember, you can load views from a view. That's okay. We're going to load a view, and we're going to load it'll be stored in includes, and we'll call it the header. We'll create a header and a footer view as well. I'm going to copy this 3 times. The next one is going to be footer. And here, this is where the catch is. We will want our main content to be different every time, obviously. So how can we do that? And the trick is to store it, rather than referencing a relative path, we're going to store it as a variable. So main content, and then when we load this view, we will set main content equal to the path. So it might be login page or something like that, and then it'll reference that. Should make more sense once we get to work on it. Okay, so while we're here, let's create a new file called header and also footer. And let's get started with the header. And all this is going to do is load our head tag and the beginning body tag. And also we're going to link to a CSS file as well. So it's a style sheet, and the link is, we're going to do PHP echo base URL, and then it'll be css/style.css. So let's go ahead and create that now. New folder, CSS, new file, style.css. Okay, and we will do that later. Okay, so we have our, and I'm sorry, did I put this in the footer? This should be in the header. Okay, that should be more or less fine for now. So let's close that out, and the next one we want to open up is the footer, and this is where we will close out everything. So right here, we need to close out, normally I would just copy and paste, but we need to close out our body and our HTML, and also we need to, we're going to be doing a little bit of JavaScript, but I'm going to come back to that. So we'll save that, close that out. And now, when we load a view, we're simply going to load this template. The template will then load the header, the footer, and the main content. So I'm going to go back to Login.php. This is our controller, remember. And here's how we're going to set what that main content view is. We know we want to open up a login form. So within my view, I'm going to create a new file, and we'll call it loginform.css. I'm sorry, PHP. Close that out for now. So we're going to do data, and we're going to create a new key, and it's going to be called main content. Remember, when we load a view, the keys are turned into variables, so that will be turned into main content, which is what we are loading from our template. Just want to make sure you guys understand this. That's what we're loading right there. So all we need to do now is set this equal to the view that we want to load, and that makes it dynamic because the template can be loaded for anything, and all you have to do is pass in the correct view that you want to load there, and you don't have to worry about the header or the footer. It's pretty cool. So we will set this to login form, and then finally this load view, and it includes template. And of course we want to pass the data array to it. Alright, so within login form for now, we'll just say login form. And let's see if this is working. So I'm going to open up MAMP, open start page, and we saved it as CI day 6, I believe. Let's check. Websites, no, it's CI day 5. Okay, come back. Refresh the page, and we need to go to index.php, load the login controller. And we'll locate the model you have specified. Okay, well, while we're at it, let's go ahead and just do a quick bit of cleanup. We'll need to anyways. Let's go into the routes, and we need to update the default controller. It's going to be login, and that should be fine for that. And then also, within our config, let's go up here, and the base URL we need to change to day 6. Auto load, we want to make sure that when we come down, let's not load the site model. That's what was causing that error. And we're going to load the database library. We have the URL and the form helper, so that should be good for now. Come back, and now we have loaded the base, so let's go to index.php. This will be the same thing. And we get the login form. If we view the source, you can see it loaded the header, the footer, and then the login form is the main content view that we loaded. Good. So we are much more dynamic now. So let's go ahead and open up our controller again. And what we want to do now is within our login form, we need to create our form so that the user can sign in, right? So let's close that out. And what we'll do here is div id equals login form. And what we're going to do here is h1. We'll say login, fool. And now we need to create our form. So we're going to use some Codeigniter helpers. So we're going to do echo form open, and this is where it's going to direct once the user clicks on the submit button. So we want to send them to the login controller, but we'll create a new method called validate credentials. Okay. Next, let's echo a form input, and this will be the name and the value respectively. So the name will be username, and the value will be username. The next one is going to be the password, and the value password. Okay, the next one, and I'm sorry, that shouldn't be an input, that should be a form password, right? Input type equals password. And then finally, let's create a form submit button, and it'll be the name of submit, and the value is going to be login. And then finally, I want to do one more thing, give the user an option to create a new account. So let's echo an anchor. This is another one. I'm not sure if I've showed you guys. It's the equivalent of creating a anchor tag manually, but it's a little bit cleaner, and it allows you to just simply pass in a relative path like login/signup. That'll be a new method we create as well. And the value is going to be create account. Okay. And that's it. Look how clean that is. So let's open. And finally, we have our closing div. That should be fine for now. So let's save that and come back, refresh the page, and now we have our basic login. So now we need to do a little bit of styling. So we created that CSS file. Let's come back to here. And let's get started. I have to do a little bit of CSS here. If you don't want to watch it, feel free to skip ahead about 3 or 4 minutes. Or if you want to watch, feel free. It's up to you. Background. B6, B6, B6. You know, some people copy and paste, but it always kind of irritates me when people copy and paste because you don't know what you missed or what was required. So it's easier if I just talk through it. And the font family is Arial. Refresh the page, and you can see that. So next, and you know what I'll do here is we'll do it like so. That way you can see it a little bit better. And login form, this is our wrapping div. And what we're going to do here is set a width to 300 pixels. Let's set a background, and that's going to be F0, F0, F0. And what I'm also going to do is add a background image. I'm not going to show you how to create that image, but it's just a small gradient that I will add shortly. So it's going to be img. Remember, when you're referencing an images folder, it's in reference to where the style sheet is located. So from the style sheet, we have to go up to the main root folder and then down to the image folder. And I called it loginbg.jpg. Repeat x, 0, 0. Put it in the top left corner. And I'll create that later, or add it in. And then border, we're going to give it 1 pixel solid white. Give it a little border around there. And now let's do some quick margins. 250 pixels on the top, and then we want the left and right to be auto, so it's centered on the page, and 0 on the bottom. Okay. Next, we obviously need to add some padding around that. 1em, like so. And let's also do Moz border radius, and maybe 3 pixels. Just give it some rounded corners, and we'll do that for WebKit too. WebKit border radius 3 pixels. Good. Next one, let's just do some quick styling for our heading tags, and I want these to be no margin on the top, because mostly they're just going to be top level headings. And font family, we're going to set it to Arial black, and then default to Arial. And then finally, align the text center. Okay, that probably would be better to the left, but it's going to mess up everything else, and this really isn't a design tutorial. Finally, input type equals text, and input type equals password. What we'll do here is set the display to block. A lot of this is for the sign up page, but we'll get some work here. 1em of margin on the bottom, the width of 280 pixels. It's a bit arbitrary. Border 5 pixels, And let's do Moz border radius 1 pixel, and of course WebKit border radius 1 pixel as well. Not sure about this 5 pixel border, why I added that. We'll leave that in there and then come back. I can't remember what that was for. And then finally some padding all around of 1 ems. Okay, getting a little bit better. So now let's do our submit button. So input type equals submit. And what we'll do here, and also we're going to style the form A, that's going to reference this create account, the anchor tag within the form. That's a little risky, so make sure if you need to be more specific that you are. We're going to set the border, no border on it, get rid of that kind of beveled effect, and margin right of 1 ems, and padding of about 6 pixels all around, text decoration, no underline for the anchor tag. Should say none. Font size, let's set them to about 12 pixels. Once again, Moz border radius 4 pixels. Same with WebKit. And finally, we'll do a background, not finally, background of 348075. And that's our NetTouch screen. Color white, and we're also going to use some more fun CSS3 properties. I've been doing a lot of that with you guys lately. We'll do a box shadow, Moz box shadow. X offset is 0, Y offset is 1 pixel down, blur is 0, and we're going to set it to white. You can't see that, but it's going to create kind of a, you can see here there's a white pixel border, so you'll see that a lot. And we're going to do the same thing with the heading as well. So, kit box shadow 0, 1 pixel 0, white. And I think that should be good for now. And it's always a good practice generally. Go ahead and do the official spec of 0, 1 pixel. Okay. So what's next? Zoom back out. We need to style when the user hovers over the image. So input type equals submit, and then when they hover over that, remember this isn't going to work in older browsers. Background, we're just going to make it a bit of a darker green, so 287368. See that? Hopefully you can see that. It just gets a little bit darker, and we're going to have to do a comma and do the form A hover as well to get this one. Yep. The only other thing I want to do is set the cursor equal to a pointer. That way the user has some feedback to know it's clickable. And the final things I want to do is if they create an account and it doesn't validate, we're going to pass them an error. So we'll store those errors within a class of error, and we're just going to set the color to 393939. I think that's a lighter black, and the font size to 15 pixels. And you know what? We'll come back and do. Actually, you know what? We have a lot to cover, so I'm just going to do all this now. Field set. We're going to create a field set when the user creates an account, and we're going to set that to a width of 300 pixels. Feel free to fast forward if this is boring you. Margin of 0. Actually, we'll set a margin bottom of about 2 ems. Display block. And then finally, we'll do the H1, and let's add a text shadow to this login full right here, all H1 tags. And the way you could do that is do text shadow, and then the same thing, X offset, Y offset, so we're pushing it down 1 pixel, no blur, and setting it to white. And you'll see there, hopefully, this low resolution, I don't know if you can see it, but if I zoom in, there's definitely a 1 pixel border on the bottom of the text. It just kind of gives it a nicer feel. But granted, on this low resolution, you really can't tell. But I promise you, you would be able to tell on your computer. Finally, tut info. I'm just going to add a little border down here. This is totally not necessary. Just to say info about the demo. It's for NetTouch and whatever. 1 pixel solid white. Top. And I don't even think I've created this just yet, so you won't even see anything. It's just a little strip at the very bottom that'll say tutorial created by Jeffrey Way for NetTouch. Position is absolute, and we'll push it to the very bottom. The width needs to be 100% of the window, and padding, we'll do 0.7 on top, 0.7 on the right, point on the bottom, and 2 m's on the left. Okay, got through that. That was the boring part. So if we come back, close this out, refresh the page, that's our login form. Okay, so now what we need to do is allow the user to sign in. So what we need to do here is within MAMP, I'm going to open my start page, open phpMyAdmin, and I apologize if I stumble. There's just so much to cover here. It's going to be a little difficult. Remember that CI series database? I've gone ahead and created a membership table. So let's view that, and these are all just samples that I've done. So let's go ahead and delete these. Just go ahead and delete all of them. And we'll insert. So the things you need to know, we have a field of the ID, the first name, the user's last name, their designated username, their password, and their email address. And that's all that I've required. The only special thing here is the password. I've set varchar to 32 characters, and that's because we're going to be using the MD5 function on it, which will turn whatever their password is into a 32 character hash. So we need to make sure that is 32. Okay, so let's create an insert, and first name, Jeffrey Way, and we will also set it up so the user can do this via our little demo. Password will be Jeff Way as well, but we will do MD5 for that. And email address, got that? And now if we go to browse, you can see that because we selected the MD5 function, it turned it into a 32 character hash. Okay, so let me think. The next thing we need to cover is, let's come back here, refresh the page, and if we view the source, we could actually clean up the source a little bit, put them on their own lines. But when they click on the submit button, they're going to be directed to the login controller and this validate credentials method. So that's what we need to do now. Let's come back, close out style, and let's create our new function. So function validate credentials. And the first thing we want to do is we want to grab their username and password, and then we're going to run a query against the database and check to see if it matches. And if it does match, we know they are a member, and then we can create a session and log them in. So the first thing we need to do to query the database is load a model. So let's load a model, and we're going to call this membership model. Let's go ahead and create that right now. New file, membership model.php. So, as always, class membership model, and it extends the model. And the first thing we want to do is we'll create just kind of a what should we call it? Validate. And the first thing we need to do here is access our database, find that table, and then we'll say retrieve all records where the username is equal to whatever the user typed into the text box, and where the password is also equal to what they typed in that text box. And if a row is returned, we know that they have an account and we can sign them in. So let's do this db where, and we're going to say where the username field, and just to clarify this, where the username is equal to what they type and where the password is equal to what they type. So where username is equal to, and the way we can refer to what they typed into that text box is input post. Codeigniter allows this. It's the same thing as post. And we're going to type in, whoops, username, whatever they typed into the text box with the name field of username. And then also, and we could chain these if we want, but I'm just going to do it like this just to keep it a little bit cleaner. And then also where the password is equal to MD5, we need to take whatever they typed into the password and hash it, because that's what's going to be compared against the database. And that's going to be this input post and then password. And let me just make sure I got my parentheses right. Post MD5, where, yeah, that's right. So where that's true, this DV get, and the name of that table is called membership, if you remember. Okay, so the next thing we do is we say if query, and of course we need to set this get query equal to a variable so we can store it, and we can say if query numRows equals 1. If one row was returned, then we know that a record was returned. They are a member. Go ahead and create a session and log them in. So return, we'll just say return true. Okay, so that's fine for now. Let's go back to our login controller. And we need to call that method. So this membership model, and we called it validate. But we need to make that equal to the return so we can figure out what was returned. And we'll say if query, so if 1 or if true, let me comment this out, if the user's credentials validated, then we're going to create a new data, excuse me, and that's going to be equal to an array. I'm still a little bit sick from last week. And we will do the username, and I'll explain this all a little bit more. This input post username, and the next one is going to be this is going to be something we're going to add to when a session is created. We can also add values to the session object. That way we can add it. So that didn't make much sense, but I'll explain it a little bit more. Is logged in, and we're just going to set that equal to true. And then we're going to modify the session that was created and add this information. That way we can reference it and say, welcome back username, or whatever they typed. So now we will do this session. And in order to work with the session class, we need to either load it or auto-load it. And I'm going to do that here. After database, session. And now we have access to that session library. So this session set user data, and this is how we can append information to the session, because by default it already comes with the last activity, the IP address, these long strings of the browser configuration. I'll show you a little bit more later, but we're going to add data. Okay, so we're going to take this information and add it to the user specific session ID. And then finally, we're going to redirect the user to site members area because they've logged in. So we've created a session. Now let's send them to the page, the members only page area. And that's going to be within a site controller and a method of members area. Okay, but now what if they didn't log in correctly? What if nothing was returned from the database? In that case, we're just going to do this index, and that's all that means is just load the login form again. Okay. So let's see if it works. There might be a mistake. Refresh the page, and the username, I think I just did Jeff_Way and Jeff_Way. I'm going to click login, and it did work. See, it checked the database and it found something. Now it tried to direct us to a page that we haven't created just yet, so let's go ahead and do that. So we're going to create a controller called site, and we're also going to create a view. And this view, we're not going to do much here, so we'll do members area. I'm not even going to bother with a template. Okay, so close that out. Membership model is good. The login. So let's refresh the page and site. Just finish this up real quickly. And the first one, function members area. We will say this load view membership. What is it called? Members area. Okay. And now we've been directed there. So if we want to clear our cookies, we shouldn't be able to access this page otherwise. So if we come back, let's remove individual cookies, and let's remove all cookies, refresh the page, and it's still loading. So we need to do some checking when the user loads any of these pages and check to see, do they have that session that allows them to be logged in? And if they don't, we cannot allow them to visit this page. So let's go back to, let me see, the next thing we want to do, I'm sorry, there's so much to cover here, it's a little difficult. Okay, the next thing we want to do here is give the user the option to sign up. So we will do function sign up, and this will be a new page. When they click on, let's go back. When they click on create an account, should be at the very end, right here, they're going to be sent to the login controller and the sign up method, and that's what we just created right here. Okay, so the first thing we want to do is we're going to load that template again, and we're going to set the main content view. We'll call that sign up form, and then this load view includes /template and pass data. Okay, now within our view, let's go ahead and create a new file, sign up form. Okay, and let's see if it works. So create account, and now we've been directed to the correct page. Good. So let's go ahead and create that sign up form. Lots to cover today. So let's create H1. Remember, we've already loaded from our template. Remember, we're loading the template is actually what we're loading, and then the template is loading the main content. So the template will load this section. That's why I'm not adding the headings and the footer. So create an account, and let's create a field set. And the first thing we need to do here is create a legend, and that'll be personal information. And next, we've got to create our form again. So we're going to do echo form open, and that's going to send the user to login controller, and we'll create a method called create member. Okay. Next, form input, and this one is going to be we'll call this first_name, and the value is going to be, and we can't just type in the value like so, because what if they try to submit a button, there's a problem with the validation, so this page is loaded again, but then they have to retype all of their information. It won't be saved. Codeigniter makes that a little bit easier for us. All we have to do is type set value, and then type in whatever the name was, and that will remember whatever they typed in first. In the previous, before the page refresh, it'll remember that and display that anyways. And then we will do, by default, the first time they load the page, it'll be first name. Hopefully that makes sense. Okay, and the next one is form input, and that's going to be last name. And once again, we're going to do set value. Last name is the name of the input, and by default, we'll call it last name. And then finally, this one is going to be email address. Set value, email address, and then by default, we will type in email address. Okay, so we have that, and let's close out our field set, and then we're going to do another one. Remember, field sets are just so we can group common areas of a form. So here, legend, and this is going to be login info. So what we'll do here, once again, PHP, just do a few more. Echo form input. And we're going to do, this time it's going to be for the username. And once again, set value from whatever they typed in the first time. By default, it'll be username. The next one is going to be their password. We could set this to a password input, but I'm just going to keep it as regular text for now. And that needs to be username. and by default it'll be password. And then finally we need them to confirm their password, correct? So we'll do password, and I'm just going to type in password 2 or password confirm, something like that. Okay, and then finally we need a submit button. So echo form submit. Ooh, Firefox update. Submit and create account. Okay. Finally, we have loaded all of our information. Now finally, we need to echo out any validation errors, because we're also going to be performing validation on this to make sure that it is an email address, that maybe they chose a password that wasn't too short or too long. So we'll be working with the validation class. So what we'll do here is PHP echo validation errors, and this is made available to us with the form validation class that we'll be working with. Lots to cover today, huh? So P, and this is what it's going to be wrapped in each error. It's going to be wrapped in a paragraph tag with the class of error. Okay. And did I forget to close something out? Oh, and of course, then we have to get rid of those parentheses. How did those get in there? Okay, and there is our form. So it looks great, right? So now, when they click on Create Account, let's see where it's going to send them. When they click on Create Account, it's going to send them to Login and a new method called Create Member. So let's come back to here, open up Login, and create that new function. Function create member. One thing I want to make note of is, notice how we're referencing these, the post. We aren't cleaning any of the information that the user types in. And the reason I'm not doing it is because by default, Codeigniter I've set to do it for me. Although I have no idea where it is. Yeah, right here. If you do a search for global XSS, you can, by default, I believe it's set to false, but you can turn it on to true, and that will automatically filter all incoming get, post, or cookie data. And that's why I'm not worrying about it too much, and I wanted to make note of that. Okay, so within our create member function, what we need to do is do some quick validation. So this load library, and we're going to load the form validation library that comes with Codeigniter. And we went over some of this, I believe, a couple lessons ago. So we need to do field name, error message, validation rules. I'll explain what that means in just a moment. So we're going to do this, form validation, and we're going to set some rules. So the first thing we're going to set for is the first name, the input with the name of first name. So the first one is called the field name. The next one is the error message that will be displayed. And then the third one is going to be the validation rules that we want to apply. So we want to make sure that we trim it, and it's required. They have to type something in. Okay. So we're going to do this again for the last name and the email. So let's change that to last name. Remember, these need to be the same as whatever the name input is. And that will be the last name, and we're also going to trim and require that as well. So next we're going to do the email address, and we're going to trim, we're going to require it, but we also want to make sure that it's a valid email. So that's amazingly simple. We just type in valid email, and that's done. Let's see if I can expand this a little more. There we go. So the next one we want to do is, now we need their username and password. So we do username, and we're going to trim and require it, but I also want it to be a minimum length. So we separate each of them with that little bar, and we'll do min_length, and within brackets the number of characters it can be. I'm going to say it needs to be at least 4 characters. And then last one is password, and the user-friendly one is password, and we need to change it. So let's do min length 4, and let's see, do we need anything else? Let's set a max length as well. That's probably not a terrible idea. Max length of maybe 32. Okay, so it cannot be more than 32, and incidentally 32 is the length of the MD5 hash, although that doesn't really matter. And then finally, let's do one last one. I'm sorry, I'm on a low resolution. It's already breaking. But we need to do password 2. That was what we called it, and we're going to call it password confirmation. And we need to make sure that it is required, and we want to make sure that it matches what they typed in the previous password box. So we're going to do matches password. Simple as that. So we've set our validation rules. Now we need to check to see whether the validation was performed successfully, if they did it correctly, or if they didn't. So if this form validation, and we're going to run, and if it returns false, there was a problem. And in that case, we will load the view again. This load view sign up form. Just checking something really quickly, or we could call sign up again, but we're not going to do that. Else it passed, in which case we can go ahead and create a new row in the database and store their information. So this load, see how much we have to cover? I hope I'm not totally boring you guys, but it's just so much to do, and it's easy to stumble on your thinking. We're going to load the membership model again, and now we're going to say if query, and that's going to be equal to this membership model, and we need to create a new method, and we're going to call it create member as well. So if that's going to return true or false, so let's go ahead and do that now. Membership model function create member. Now we're going to do make this really easy to understand. New member insert data, and that's going to be array, and all we're doing here is running an insert query into the database. So we need to remember we have to insert a first name, a last name, their email address, their username, and their password. So first name, and that's going to be equal to this input, once again post first name. So then we have last name, email. So last name, and I'm sorry, of course these need to be separated with underscores. Last name, last. The next one is email address. What else? Username. Remember, we're only doing this if the validation passed. And we are going to XSS clean everything. So post password. And let me see. Of course, with the password, when we insert it, we need to convert it to an MD5 string. So we'll do that. And we could even make it more secure if we wanted, but that's fine for now. Maybe in the next lesson we'll take this even further, make it more secure, make it more flexible. It just depends on if you guys like this one or not. So we've created our insert data. So now in order to insert into the database, we'll do insert equals this db insert, and we're going to insert into the membership table. And what are we going to insert? This information right here. Done. Pretty darn simple. And then finally, what we're going to do is we're going to return insert, and this will return 1 or 0, true or false. So let's come back to login. And what we need to do now is, so we've called the create member method. We know what that's going to return. It's going to return true or false. So we're saying if it returns true, that means we did enter their information into the database. So let's go ahead and do data main content, and that's going to be equal to we'll call this view sign up successful. And now let's just load our view, our template view. This load view, what is it called? Includes /template and pass data to it. Now, if it did not return, if there was a problem adding their information to the database, we'll do this, load, view, and load that sign-up form again. Okay, so we need to create the view of sign-up successful, sign-up success, and we could group these into their own folder. You probably should, actually. And what we'll say here is, it's already loaded the header and the footer, so we'll say congrats. And then your account has been created. And maybe in the next lesson we'll learn how to send them an email confirmation or something like that. And let's also add an anchor tag to the login form for them to log in. And that's going to be login, where we're going to send to them, and it'll be login now. Okay, so I think that should be everything. A lot of code here. Let's refresh the page. It looks like I already made a mistake, actually. Okay, let's see if we look around. It's got to be with the validation. There it is. If this form validation run, I had that closed there and it needs to close there. Let's see if that fixes it. Good. So now let's try it out. John Doe, john@doe.com. Login information, we'll call it John Doe. Password is John Doe, and password confirm. Let's not make the password identical. So let's create account. And that was interesting. So login, create member. Okay, well, we can see here it is running. We have our password confirmation, but we're loading the view, and I'm fairly sure, yeah, this load view sign-up form, no, we need to actually reload the template, because as it is, if we view the source, we're just loading that one view. We need to load the template. So what we can do here is just call this sign-up function. So this sign-up. Come back, refresh the page, and now let's change a couple things. Let's just set it to Joe and click create account. Yeah, there we go. And now we're being told, all right, the email address field must contain a valid email address. So I'll say joe.com, create account. And we still have a problem. The password confirmation does not match. Click it, and let's see where we were sent. So we haven't gotten a response. So let's go back to phpMyAdmin and see if anything was inserted. And no, it was not inserted. So let's see what the mistake was. So we have create member. If this form, if everything ran successfully, we load the membership model. If query equals this membership model, create member. Then we do data main content sign up successful. We load our template. So it must be a problem with the membership model. And there it is. Extra semicolon that should not be there. So let's come back, refresh the page, and once again, John Doe, john@doe.com, John Doe, John Doe, John Doe. Create account. Congrats, your account has been created. So that doesn't look that great, but who cares? You guys can style that on your own. Let's make sure that it does work. I'm going to click Browse. And now his account has been created and his password has been converted. So let's come back, log in now, and let's see if it works. John Doe, John Doe. Log in. And members area only. But if we remember correctly, let's go ahead and remove that. Remember, we created a session. So let's remove all the cookies. Reload the page, and we can still access that area. So that's what we need to work on. So what I'm going to do now is let's work on our site controller. So let's come back to controllers, and we're going to load site. And we have our members area only section. But we need to, with every page within this site controller, we need to check to see if the user is logged in. So what we'll do here is we'll do that within our construct function. And we need to attach the controller. And what we're going to do is we're going to call a function called this is logged in, and that's what we're going to call it. Okay. And what we'll do here is we're going to create a variable called isLoggedIn. And remember, what we need to do here is at this point, once they've accessed this members area only, they should have a session. A session should have been created, and we should have added that data that told them that, let me see if I can find it for you. There it is. We attached this information that added their username and this isLoggedIn key called true. Now you might be wondering, well, why can't I just go into the cookie and edit that information? And technically you could, but they make it a little bit easier for you. We can encrypt all of that information, which makes it impervious. If I can find it. Here it is, session variables. So session encrypt cookie, true. And now that will much more secure our cookie. But we could even take it further and add it to a database, which we're not going to do today. So let's go back to our site, and we're going to add isLoggedIn equals this, and the way we retrieve those values from the session is this session user data, and then we type in the key, which we called isLoggedIn, and we set that to true. So what we'll say is if is set, or if not is set, and just copy that. If not is set, or isLoggedIn does not equal true, then we know they don't have permission to be on this page. And we'll say echo you don't have permission to access this page, and let's just give them a link back. So that would be login. And finally, let's just die. We don't even really need that though. So every time this class is instantiated, we're going to run isLoggedIn. So let's see if it works now. Okay, we don't have permission, but we do have an error. Use of undefined constant isLoggedIn, assumed isLoggedIn. Controller site, line 20, so let's do some quick debugging. 20, if not is set isLoggedIn. Oh, there we go. Refresh the page, and now we don't have permission to access this page. So we're going to copy this, and this time let's log in. John Doe, John Doe. And now it's telling us we don't have permission still. So let's go back to Login.php, and let's check. So we validate their current credentials. If it was validated, we create this data array, we set true, then we set the user data, and then we redirect them to the members area. So then when we load the members area, we call isLoggedIn, and we say if not is set isLoggedIn, or isLoggedIn does not equal true. Refresh the page, login. Not now. There we go. Yeah, that was the problem, is I accidentally did one extra equal sign. So now we're in the members area only. Let's go ahead and delete our cookies, remove all cookies, refresh the page, and now we're told you don't have permission to access this page. Great, that's what we want. Let's try it one more time just to make sure everything's working. Create account, Joe Plumber, Joe at plumber.com, Joe Plumber, Joe Plumber. Create account, and now let's log in. So I'm pretty sure that's everything I wanted to show you today. If you want to just do one more thing, tutorial's over. I'm just doing a little bit of extra cleanup if you guys would like to watch. Let's create a new file called tut.info. And all I'm going to do here is just type div. If you remember, I said we have that section that details the tutorial. So tutorial created by Jeffrey Way for And then under the sign up form, we need to make sure that we include that. So right here, this load view includes. The only reason I didn't do this earlier because it's just not necessary at all. And let's add it to the bottom of login form as well. And now we get that. Just create account. Sign up form, this load view. There it is. Okay guys, thanks so much.